Hello everybody. In this video, I'll be going over how you can search users based on the query params that you pass into the URL. So for instance, if you have a path internal/users/search, whatever you pass in after the question mark are going to be query params. So this is going to return all the users where the status equals active. So I have the status column in the database, and that is going to return all the users where the status equals active. And if you're following along from the REST API tutorial right before this, you'll just have to include the column here, click that tool sign over here, just add the status. And also in your data access object, you would want to include the status here in the query insert user and a question mark, and also add user.status here. And of course, before that, you'll have to add the status in your user struct. So to search the users based on the query params, of course, I'm going to start off with mapping. So router.get, and the path we are using is internal/users/search. And here I'm going to be passing in users.search function. So I would be going into this users controller, scroll down, and create that function search. Pass in the gin context. And here I want to do c.query and pass in the status. And this is going to return the status from the URL. So what query do is return the keyed value. So by passing in the status as a key, it's going to return the active value. And I'll then pass this into the search user method in the services. So just pass in the status. And of course now I'll move on to the service, scroll down and create this function called search user and pass in the status of type string. And this returns a slice of users, and we actually have to create that type in the data transfer object. So before we continue, we're going to create this in the data transfer object. So just come here and create type users of a slice of user. So just save that, come back here. Here I want to create a variable called data access object, and it's going to be a pointer to a user that's empty, and return a find by status method, which I will be creating in the data access object. So go to data access object. This is where we would be interacting with the database. I'm first going to create this query find by status and do select ID, first name, last name, email, and status from users where status equals question mark. Now I'm going to come down here and create a method of receiver user, name it find by status, and pass in a status of type string. And this is going to return a slice of user and an error like this. So again, if you haven't watched the previous tutorials, this errors package is something we created here, and we have this REST error struct that will be returned based on the type of error that we have. So here I want to do users/db.client prepare and pass in that query that we just prepared above. So again, if you haven't watched my REST API tutorial before this, we created this database in the users DB, and this is our database connection to the SQL database. Now back in the data access object, this is going to return a pointer to a statement and an error. Pointer to a statement and an error. First, I'm going to handle that error, check if there is any error. If there is, I'm going to do nil new internal server error and just say there is a database error for now. And we always have to close the statement. So if we don't have any error, I want to do statement.query and pass this status here. So this query returns rows, unlike the exec method that returns a single result or the scan method that returns a row. Because we want to return all the users with that specific status that we are passing in, not just one. So this is going to return rows and error. Again, I want to handle that error. Return nil errors.new internal server error and just say it's a database error. And same for the rows, I will have to close it. So now that we have the rows returned from the database, we want to loop through those rows and pass the data from there into our pointer to the user. I actually want to create this variable called result, and it's gonna be a slice of user of length 0. And I'm gonna loop through these rows by doing rows.next, and within each loop I want to create this user of type user. And I'm gonna do rows.scan and pass in each field from the pointer to the user like this. Pointer to user last name and user email. So scan copies the columns from the matched row into the values pointed at by destination. So it would copy the data from the rows into our pointer based on the matching fields in here. And this returns an error. And again, I'm going to handle the error and return nil errors.new internal server error and say there's a database error. And at the end of the loop, I'm going to update my results slice by appending this user that we have from the scan. And if the length of the results is 0 at the end of the loop, I'm gonna return nil errors, new internal server error. And here I just want to say no user matching status and pass in that status in there. If we have the results, I'm going to return the results in nil. I'll save it, move back up to the service, again save it to the controller. I want to wrap up the controller, so search user is going to return a slice of users and an error, and I'm going to check if there is any error, and if there is, I'm going to return error.status error like this and do a return. At the end of the function, I'm going to do c.json status OK and pass this users back as a response. Save it, go to mappings, save it. And that's pretty much it. Now I want to test it by running main.go. So we have this path available. So now in the Postman, I have this URL prepared. So in the params, query params section, I'll be passing in the status key and active as the value and just click send. So I realized we actually have to include the status field in the scan method, and we were getting that error because it didn't have a matching column inside the method. So I'll save it, close, and run main.go again. So just run it, and now we have all the users where the status equals active. So that's it for searching rows based on the query params. Thank you all for watching.